Hi guys, Olive here today to bring you my fall book haul. I've stopped into a number of different bookstores lately, both new bookstores, used bookstores, here in Pittsburgh during my travels. I've been traveling here and there over the past few months. Normally when I go to a place, especially a new place, I like to hit up at least one bookstore. It's a fun little ritual I have. Not like I need more books, but I enjoy shopping for new books. I like to see what new bookstores are out there. There was one trip I took where I physically couldn't bring any books home. I carried on luggage. There was no space in my suitcase, and I didn't really want to ship books home. So that was a bit of a bummer. But pretty much every other trip, I've been able to go to a bookstore. So let me show you all the books that I've picked up recently. I recently went to Barnes & Noble with my lovely friend Denise, who has a Booktube channel called La Rosa Reads. I highly suggest you check it out if you haven't already. But I figured we could meet up at Barnes & Noble to catch up, get some coffee, but also to take advantage of some specials that they had going on. One of those was, I think, buy one, get one half off select paperbacks. And this next one was a part of that deal. It is called Shady Hollow by Juno Black. This is the first book in a cozy mystery / fantasy series. It's set in a village full of anthropomorphic woodland animals, and we are following an investigative reporter Fox, who is hot on the case of this taciturn toad villager who is turned up dead. This sounded so cute, even if there's a murder involved, and it was highly reminiscent of Animal Crossing, which I adore, so I couldn't resist this. And I felt the same way about the other paperback that I picked up as part of that deal, and that is Pizza Girl by Jean Kyung Fraser. This book is advertised as a coming-of-age tale about this pregnant teenage pizza girl who becomes obsessed with one of her customers. This sounded so campy. I love this cover. It seems like exactly the type of book that I always want this time of year. But then I was looking at the average Goodreads rating for this one. It is rather low, and that momentarily gave me pause until I came to the realization that a lot of books that I go on to love are not universally beloved on Goodreads. So I'm going to read this one and see where I land on it. Then also at Barnes & Noble, they were running one additional deal. They had select hardcovers half off. And both Denise and I couldn't pass up the opportunity to grab copies of Pride and Prejudice and Pittsburgh by Rachel Lippincott. This is a time travel romance. In it, we follow a Regency-era young woman who is being forced to marry an older man whom she does not love. She somehow time travels to 2023 Pittsburgh, and she meets the actual love of her life. Now, from reading reviews of this one, it does seem like this title is a little bit misleading. Not the Pittsburgh part. It does in fact take place in Pittsburgh, but the Pride and Prejudice part. It seems like this isn't a retelling or a reimagining of Pride and Prejudice. It's just that they have that Regency era connection. So that's a little bit disappointing. But it does seem like this one is incredibly sweet, and I think Denise and I might actually try to read this one together at some point in the near future, since we both live in Pittsburgh. Then a non-Booktube friend of mine was looking to get rid of a big stack of books. She sent me a picture, asked me if I wanted any of them, and I picked Scent of Triumph by Jan Moran. Now, this is historical fiction set during World War II, which typically isn't my thing. But it sounded really compelling. We follow a French perfume formulator with a German husband, and they are living in the United States at the time that Germany invades Poland, and they have family living in Poland at the time. So we follow them as they're trying desperately to get over to Europe to help out their family. It just sounded really interesting, especially that perfume element to it. I've read a number of different books on perfume and scent over the years, both fiction and nonfiction, and I always really connect with them. So I figured I could at least give this one a try, especially if it was just available to me for free. The next 3 books I'm going to show you are all from different library book sales from around the greater Pittsburgh area. One of them is Catherine House by Elizabeth Thomas. This is a work of dark academia. It's one of those secret history-esque books that I made a video about a few years back. So this one is set at a university, a very strange school in rural Pennsylvania. and an undergrad discovers a secret about an exclusive group of students. Yeah, this one's going to be very, very similar to The Secret History. This has been a very polarizing book, though. I recall there being some controversy about it when it first came out. I have trouble keeping track of everything that happens in the book world. I've just been doing this for too long. But I figured this was dirt cheap at the library book sale I was at. It's a pretty low investment, like $1, to see if I'm actually going to like this one or not. So we'll see. And the same thing goes for The Kingdom of Ohio by Matthew Flaming. This seems to be an alternative history, sci-fi, a little bit steampunk kind of novel. Seems like we've got a little bit of everything going on in this one. It's set in 1901 New York City. We follow a young man who moves to the city to help out build this new underground railroad system, and he meets a young woman who claims to be the daughter of the King of Ohio, whatever that means. Apparently Tesla also makes a cameo in this one. This is another one that doesn't have the most spectacular reviews, but I was intrigued by it enough to at least bring it home. Speaking of Ohio, though, my next library book sale find is set there. And this is a book that I can honestly say I never thought I would have an interest in reading. And that is the critically acclaimed Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellmann. If you don't know anything about this book, you must not have been watching Booktube content when this book was released and during the awards season following this book's release. I feel like everybody was talking about this one. It's essentially a stream of consciousness, like run-on sentence of a book about this woman in Ohio talking about her worries about the world as she's at home baking pies. Now, it never really seemed like my kind of book, but when I saw this pristine copy of it, it felt kind of like a sign that I at least needed to pick it up and look at it. And when I read the back, I had forgotten that this book takes place in Ohio, which, if you don't know anything about the geography of the state of Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh is actually closer to Ohio than it is to Philadelphia. So I actually spend a good amount of time in Ohio, specifically the Cleveland area is where I spend most of my time. But hearing that it was set in Ohio and then seeing this beautiful copy, I decided I would at least bring it home and maybe give it a try at some point in the future. Continuing on the topic of Ohio, this next one I picked up from the Book Loft in Columbus, which is an amazing bookstore if you've never been. Highly, highly recommend. I got myself a copy of Flight by Lynn Steger Strong. This is a family drama, and we follow 3 different siblings and their spouses, their families, who are getting ready to meet up for Christmas for the very first time since the death of their mother. Now that sounded really good, but what actually convinced me to buy this one was that there is a Lily King blurb at the top of this. Now, just in general, I have very mixed feelings about blurbs and the whole blurbing industry. I think I'm actually going to make a whole video on that topic because I just have a lot to say about it. But Lily King, not only is she one of my favorite authors, I've made a whole author spotlight video on her in the past, but I feel like she doesn't give out blurbs very often. I feel like she gives them out very sparingly, which just inherently makes me trust them a little bit more. So if she thinks this is beautiful, I'm highly confident that I will also like it. And the fact that there's a bird on the cover didn't hurt either. On that note, we will move into all of the nonfiction books that I've picked up recently, because the first one is a bird book called Loon Lessons, Uncommon Encounters with the Great Northern Diver by James D. Peruke. This is a book all about the biology and behavior of the common loon, which is a gorgeous water bird whose name I think doubles as just a spectacular Shakespearean insult. I loved the cover of this book. I loved the title. I can't wait to learn more about this bird. I know a little bit about them just because I play far too much Wingspan, but I could always learn more. And this book was put out by the University of Minnesota Press. That was just the cherry on top. I love the books they put out, so it felt like this one was just meant to be mine. Another gorgeous nature book that I got is actually one that I had to order. It is The Golden Mole and Other Living Treasure by Catherine Rundell. This is a spectacularly beautiful, illustrated book that tells the stories of some amazing creatures. I have been lusting after this book and its gorgeous gilded edges since this was nominated for the Wainwright Prize last year, and now I finally have it. I have a couple more nature books to show you, and both of these actually came from the exact same used bookstore that I went to in Ohio. Lots of Ohio representation in this book haul for some strange reason, but I was so excited to find a pristine paperback copy of Beaverland, How One Weird Rodent Made America by Layla Phillips. This is one that I've been curious about for a long time. It actually won't be the first book I read on this topic. Are you surprised to hear me say that? Probably not. I read and really enjoyed a book called Eager about beavers by Ben Goldfarb during a nonfiction November a number of years ago. So I'm excited to read this one and see how it compares. But I also found The Natural World of Winnie the Pooh, a walk through the forest that inspired The 100-Acre Wood by Catherine Alto. From what I read about this book, it seems like it's part biography of A.A. Milne, creator of Winnie the Pooh, but it's also a look at Ashdown Forest, which is the forest that inspired the setting for these stories. I grew up loving Winnie the Pooh, so taking this home was not optional. Now, from nature to science, I found a used copy of Quinine, Malaria, and the Quest for a Cure That Changed the World by Fiametta Rocco. And this book tells the story of the intensive efforts to first discover and then process quinine, which is the only known cure for malaria. If you know anything about my reading tastes, you'll know that I am fascinated by medicine, and this sounds thrilling. You may have seen that just recently I made a video going through the long list for the Bailey Gifford Prize for Nonfiction for 2024. But when I was just recently at White Whale Bookstore here in Pittsburgh, I saw that they had last year's winner of that prize on sale for 30% off. So I had to get myself a copy of Fireweather, A True Story from a Hotter World by John Valiant. This book tells the story of the Canadian wildfires in 2016, which from what I read did a similar amount of damage as Hurricane Katrina did back in the mid-2000s. But also in this book, he discusses the oil industry, climate science, and in general, the power of fire. Even if this one hadn't have won the Bailey Gifford last year, I would still be interested in reading it, but the fact that it won the prize does give me one little extra push in its direction. But speaking of the power of fire, one of the ways that we use it is to cook the food that we eat, and I will allow that to move us into talking about this next book. It is called Cooked, A Natural History of Transformation by Michael Pollan. And in this book, he discusses the ways that we use the different elements, fire being one of them, but also earth, water, and air, to transform the food that we eat. And it seems like as he's discussing those things, he also talks about how food and how cooking influence our day-to-day lives. I love Michael Pollan. I've read a number of his books now. I feel like I love every new one I read more than I loved the last one. I'm so excited to keep working my way through his bibliography, and I'm especially excited about this one because I love to cook. Another food book I picked up is a newish release. It came out fairly recently. It's called Bite by Bite, Nourishments and Jamborees by Amy Nizuku Mutatil. This book is a collection of vignettes about food. It combines memoir, natural history, and cultural history, and then everything is tied back to themes of nourishment and memory. This one sounds so similar to books that I have loved before. Next up, I have a couple of books about specific foods or beverages. One of them is called How Carrots Won the Trojan War, Curious but True Stories of Common Vegetables by Rebecca Rupp. This is a collection of little-known origin stories, legends, and historically significant tales about 23 of the world's most common vegetables. I eat a lot of vegetables myself. This book is illustrated. I just couldn't resist this when I saw it at a library book sale. The next book I'm going to show you is another one I got at White Whale. It is called Agave Spirits, The Past, Present, and Future of Mezcals by Gary Paul Nabhan and David Suro Pinera. This book is all about the agave spirits, also known as mezcals. So the history behind them, the tradition surrounding the creation of them, the different varieties of mezcal that there are. I have been interested in this book for a really long time, since it came out, because I adore mezcal, but then I saw that it got a new cover coming out in paperback, and I just had to have it. This looks delectable. The publisher Spiegel and Grau sent me this next one, unsolicited, but still most welcome. They're one of my favorite publishers. I love the books they put out. So they sent me a copy of Group Living and Other Recipes by Lola Milholland. This is a memoir all about this author's unconventional upbringing. She had very free-spirited parents, and she grew up living in a very communal environment where everything was shared. And apparently she also shares some recipes with us in this book. I mean, this sounds right up my alley. The next book I'm going to show you is also more personal in nature, and it's another book prize book, which this haul seems to have a lot of, but this is called The Story of a Heart by Rachel Clark. This book was just recently nominated for the Bailey Gifford Prize for Nonfiction. I spoke about it in that long list video that I just mentioned earlier. But this book tells the story of a heart transplant from one dying child to a child in need. It sounds both beautiful and heartbreaking. I really wanted to read it. I talked about that in my long list video, but I was lamenting in that video how much I preferred the UK cover to the US edition. And so many of you were kind enough to tell me in the comments that I could order myself a copy of the UK cover from Blackwell's because they offer free international shipping. So I went ahead and placed an order with them. Thank you all so much for letting me know about that. I could not be more thrilled to have this book in my hands. But now let's move into some history. And the first two history books I'm going to show you both have New York City at their centers. The first one is called Liberty's Torch, The Great Adventure to Build the Statue of Liberty by Elizabeth Mitchell. And this book is about one man's dream, one man's efforts to build this iconic American monument and all of the lesser known struggles that it took to get the job done. I am sure this book is going to take what I think I know about the statue and turn it completely on its head. The next New York City book sounds like a wild one. It is called The Sun and the Moon, the remarkable true account of hoaxers, showmen, dueling journalists, and lunar man-bats in 19th century New York by Matthew Goodman. This book tells the unbelievable true story of how the country's first penny paper, which was called The Sun, somehow convinced citizens of 1830s New York City that the moon was inhabited. This is definitely one of those the truth is stranger than fiction kinds of books. More drama. I also got a book called The Trial, A History from Socrates to O.J. Simpson by Sadakat Kadri. This is a collection of anecdotes about legal battles throughout the ages, and I think it also discusses the Salem witch trials. So if you're looking for a more unique book about witchy things this Halloween season, this might make a good choice. The penultimate book in this haul is another work of history, and I was so happy to find this used, floppy paperback copy of We Don't Know Ourselves, A Personal History of Modern Ireland by Fintan O'Toole. And this book takes on modern Irish history in pretty much every sense, political, economic, social, but it seems like the author also highlights the influence of the Catholic Church behind all of that. I have heard nothing but glowing praise for this book, so I know this is worth owning. And we will close out this book haul with a biography of Georgia O'Keeffe by Roxana Robinson. This book is all about the life and work of the artist, who is sometimes known as the mother of American modernism. I've been a fan of her work for quite some time. It's actually a dream of mine to go to her museum in New Mexico someday. And when I finally make that dream a reality, this book will definitely be coming with me. So those are all the books that I've picked up recently. Let me know if any of them also interest you. Did you add any of them to your TBR? If you have read any of these, I would also love to hear from you. I would love to know which ones to prioritize. I'm starting to think about my reading for the rest of this year and then heading into next year, starting to make my 25 nonfiction books to read in 2025 list. So if you think any of the books in this haul should be on that list, let me know in the comments below. All the books that I showed today will be listed and linked for you in the description box below for your clicking convenience. And at the very bottom of the exact same description box, you'll also see links to everywhere you can find me around the internet. So my Goodreads, Instagram, Storygraph, all the places I'm the most active in case you want to keep up with what I'm reading and doing right now. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.